the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise.
Her ongoing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life forms and new civilizations.
To boldly go where no one has gone before.
Everybody remember where we parked.
We come in peace.
Battle stations.
Something's got me!
6 seconds to impact.
Fire.
The Star Trek Saga, from one generation to the next. Hosted by Patrick Stewart, with interviews and appearances by members of the original casts of Star Trek and Star Trek The Next Generation, and the creator of Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry.
Hello, I'm Patrick Stewart. All around me is evidence of man's phenomenal achievements in space, from the first landing on the moon to the space shuttle missions and beyond. In the next 2 hours, we'll explore another incredible phenomenon in the world of television and motion pictures, one that has lasted for over 20 years and is still going strong today. The Star Trek Saga. We'll take you behind the scenes for an in-depth look at the history of this acclaimed series, from its early beginnings to the new series, Star Trek The Next Generation. And for the first time on television, we'll present a rare color version of Gene Roddenberry's original Star Trek pilot, The Cage, recently discovered in the archives of Paramount Studios vaults. Our historic journey through the Star Trek saga from one generation to the next will begin in a... 1976 marked the era of the space shuttle, an exciting new development in NASA's space program. Although 7 years had passed since the cancellation of the original Star Trek series, its popularity endured. Over 400,000 letters were sent to Washington demanding that NASA name the first of these experimental space shuttles after the futuristic Starship in the popular television series. The Enterprise space shuttle illustrates just part of the enormous impact Star Trek has had on our culture. The original series has become the most successful syndicated show in television history. In addition, there have been 4 hit movies and a new series, Star Trek The Next Generation. Why has Star Trek been popular for so long? Well, there are several theories. Many believe it presents a message of hope for the future of mankind. Others admire its futuristic depiction of current social issues. Some see one good adventure after another.
It speaks to some basic human needs that there is a tomorrow. It's not all going to be over with a big flash and a bomb.
I never could figure out what it was, and we have spent 4 movies trying to figure out what made the original series work so well.
And if you think of them as futuristic folk tales or futuristic legends, they're something that can be told time and time again, and you come back to them because, in part, they are familiar.
The only reason I can give is that, hey, it's got some kind of magic to it.
But the future of Star Trek was not always so bright. Let's warp speed back in time to see how this extraordinary series came into existence. Back in 1964, Gene Roddenberry proposed a series that would explore ideas within a space travel format. He promised to deliver a kind of wagon train to the stars.
There was sort of a little fakery on my part, too, because Westerns were exciting then, and they could understand wagon train, whereas very few people in those days read science fiction, and almost no network executives or studio heads.
Roddenberry wrote and produced a pilot episode entitled The Cage, which you will see tonight. It starred Jeffrey Hunter, Susan Oliver, and the young Leonard Nimoy. However, the executives at NBC rejected Gene's concept, calling The Cage pilot too cerebral.
I felt that I'd double-crossed him. I'd written him this thing about where the mind went in certain ways, and they wanted someone with bare knuckles in a fist fight.
But something unique happened. For the first time in history, a second pilot was commissioned. This time, NBC was pleased with the result, and the Enterprise's 5-year mission finally took flight in 1966. Several cast changes were made, and the only survivor of the cage pilot was Leonard Nimoy's character of Spock.
I believe there's some hope for you after all, Mr. Spock.
Captain Kirk is Captain Hornblower of the sailing ships, who was a great hero, and Hemingway said it's the most exciting adventure fiction in the human language.
Hailing frequencies open, sir.
I was pleased that in those days, when you couldn't get even blacks on television, that I not only had a black, but a black woman and a black officer.
We need some repair, sir, but the ship is intact.
Scots have always been shipbuilders and ship engineers and so on.
Planet dead ahead, Captain. It seems to indicate artificial power being generated in factor 7 quantities.
Great affection I have for Asians and what they do and the important part they play in the world.
How close will we come to the nearest Klingon outpost if we continue on our present course?
1 parsec, sir. Close enough to smell them.
Chekhov came on the show because I'd read something and someone had sent me a copy of a Russian newspaper in which they said after our first year, the ugly Americans are at it again. We were the first people in space, but the Americans don't even have a Russian aboard this crew.
Within 3 months of that first season, Star Trek was in danger of an early cancellation. The ratings were shaky, and only a massive letter campaign by its viewers kept the show alive. To put things in historical perspective, let's remind you of the 60s when Star Trek originally aired. The space program was preparing for its first lunar landing. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. rallied thousands in support of civil rights. 500,000 people gathered in Woodstock for peace, love, and rock and roll. And students protested across America, calling for an end to the war in Vietnam. To temporarily escape some of the disturbing events in the world, the majority of television viewers tuned into a familiar Western or a light-hearted sitcom. Among the most popular shows at the time were Bonanza, The Beverly Hillbillies, Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, and Mission Impossible. But there was something very special about Star Trek. It was the only television show on the air that presented a future where all races and cultures worked together, where men and women explored the galaxy to better understand the universe and themselves.